So it would be interesting. And the other thing is that there have been various experiments with more open publication, open peer review, open notebooks, and they, by a variety of measures, they have not always produced the best work. So that doesn't mean that they are fundamentally flawed. It means that we as scientists have to change the way we understand our practice, and that's a huge, huge change, huge cultural change, and that will be a long time coming, I think. There's no lack of templates for how to do this. So the open source software movement, I think, has this worked out incredibly well. Okay, where everything is available and you put your name on it, and your reputation is your integrity and your quality, which after all is what academia is really all about anyway, right? So I think there's lots of templates. I think someone who would take the leadership position and say, okay, we're going to do a big project, but I'm going to commit my funding bodies to recognizing that they won't be able to judge me by the normal criteria, but but presumably what he's done is get a commitment that the publications and impact factor won't be the only criteria. There will be other criteria. It could be very successful. Yeah, I mean, there's a certain number of battles one can fight, I think. I didn't grow up in an open environment. I stumbled into this open source culture. I can tell you enormously funny anecdotes about it. When we first started OME, this goes back many, many years, we had an idea of what we wanted to do, and critically, we built an application that could do it. It was very clunky, but it worked. And we went on a tour of different commercial digital imaging companies, microscope companies. Okay. And we wanted to say to them, this is what we want to do, and we want to work with you. And we wanted to get that message clear at the beginning. And our first meeting was with one of the, at that time, one of the biggest vendors of microscope imaging software for the biological sciences. And we went to their headquarters, and we arranged a meeting with them. We went and we met with their CEO, who I had known, and also their lead technical officer. And we talked about what we wanted to do, and they were very polite. And then we showed it working, and then they were slightly more interested, and they started taking us seriously. So then we had a more detailed discussion about how we could work together, and their CEO said, well, we're a commercial software vendor, and we're a Windows shop, right? Everything we do is on Windows. We don't really have much familiarity with Linux or any of these other things. And the lead technical guy said, well, actually, all our email runs on Linux because it gives me much better control of what we need to do. And so the CEO said, oh, that's interesting. Well, I guess we do have experience in Linux. But this whole open source thing, this is very weird, right? So this is not something we're used to. And the lead technical guy pipes up again. He said, well, actually, at night, I work on a couple open source projects and make contributions to these projects. And you could just see the CEO thinking, I pay you during the day to write software, and then you go home at night and work for free. And you could see him almost wanting to ask that question, and this guy says, I do it because I love it, and I'm making a contribution to the community. And it's those kinds of moments, people treating what they're building as an art, much like we do in science, and that by building something well and building something that's useful, you can contribute to a global project is taken as a sort of a, people take that very seriously, and the developers take that very seriously. So seeing that in action and seeing how that has led to some incredible software that runs much of what we use. There's probably open source software in your video camera. It's a pretty powerful thing. Sorry, I diverted there. What's an argument against open science?
Yeah.
I think almost all the arguments I know of, which are protecting our students.
Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Well, basically our students need to be able to get competitive papers, and those competitive papers depend sometimes on keeping results quiet for some time, so your competition doesn't.
But why?
Why?
Yeah.
Because our current publication structure prohibits me from publishing in every paper must be a significant advance. And if I can't publish a paper in a prominent journal, and thus my student's name can't be on that paper, and that he or she needs that paper for their career. If that paper doesn't exist, they can't move forward. And the only way I can get that paper if those results are novel and distinct from anybody else.
So how does making the data open before publication mean the results aren't novel?
If the data is open, someone else can do the same analysis that we're doing and have the same insights that we have. Full stop.
And how likely is that?
It's a really interesting question, Sarah. So if we just drop the data out there and say, so here's the data, how likely is it that someone will understand what we're saying? I don't think it's 100% certain, actually, given the volume of data that we generate around some problem. So the best way to actually obfuscate or prevent that from happening would be to just put everything out there, and there would be a lot of distractions, because science tends to take this sort of, it would be great if our progression to understanding was linear, but it's not.
What about the argument that by putting it out with your name and department and stuff stamped all over it, shows ahead of time that it's your work?
Those arguments are all possible, but there is no mechanism in place to support that. So, sitting here in the United Kingdom in 2011 with a national review of the universities and the coming up, okay, unless with all of the universities and all the departments now focusing on that, which is fine, unless that review provides some mechanism, unless the regular reviews for funding that we all go through account for that, the proposal is, it's DOA. I mean, they're great ideas. I support them. But unfortunately, they can't occur. Well, to do that would essentially be to dare these different evaluation mechanisms to ignore that kind of activity. And it's very, very risky. For me, as a tenured professor in a prominent institution, actually it's very easy, okay? I won't lose my salary. I may lose a couple grants, actually, to be frank. We're working on something right now, which is very, very exciting, okay? But I know that if certain of our competitors found out about it, they'd be all over it too. Do you think I'm telling anybody? No. But let's just, for the moment, pretend I did. It would be terrific. All sorts of discovery would ensue. Probably the end result would be we'd know more. But in the current climate, my postdoc's chances for a job would be significantly, almost certainly, hampered. Because of that, I can't do it. I cannot take somebody who has worked so hard for so many hours, for so many years, and say, because of this ideal, which he will agree with in principle, because of this ideal, I'm going to do this and sacrifice your career for certain. I couldn't do that. And nor could anybody in my position. And until that problem is solved, I think these are interesting, important debates, but they won't lead us anywhere.